Have you ever been watching a new film, you've had so much fun with it, so you go to review it or just look it up online just to find out that everyone else absolutely hates it? I thought it'd be really fun today to talk about some of those films that have really low ratings but that I personally really love. I have previously done a video like this before, so I will link that on the screen and in the description. Starting off today with Saw: The Final Chapter, or Saw 3D. This has a rating of 9% by critics on Rotten Tomatoes, which I just think is absolutely insane and just feels very harsh. The audience score is 41%, which does feel more understandable and more respectable, obviously, than 9%. But I do still feel like it's a little low because I think this is a really fun film. This is the 7th installment in the Saw franchise, where we follow a man called Bobby who claims to be a jigsaw trap survivor. From this, he's got a book deal and become a bit of a self-help public figure, but he is actually a scam artist. He never was in a saw trap. He's just doing this for fame and attention and obviously money. He profits off of his lies and deception, giving people false hope and scamming his way into fame. Jigsaw decides to teach Bobby a lesson and see how he would actually do when put into a test. He has to make his way through a series of rooms. Each of the rooms holds someone that he knows, people that are also in on the scam, and he is the only person that can save them from these traps. He has to make his way to the end of the trial in order to be able to escape himself and also to save his wife. The only way that he can save his friends and staff from the traps is usually by inflicting pain on himself, so we really get to see what he's actually like when put in a situation that he's spoken so much about, because he's said before that the trap, the fake trap that he's made up, was one where he had to put metal hooks through his pectoral muscles, I think that's the right word, and pull himself up. So is he actually as brave as he makes out to be? We also get some scenes in this with John Kramer's wife Jill, and just seeing how her story is continuing. Some criticisms are very valid for this film, like how the blood is pink. I think that's something to do with it being 3D. It does have some questionable CGI. In some of the traps, it is very obviously CGI. Some moments I do think it was quite unnecessary. This film does have its fair share of flaws, but it does also have some really fun moments, interesting traps, and an entertaining story. I actually do really like the plot and seeing Bobby go through different traps and trials. I think I usually do prefer the Saw films where instead of just following different characters, where we follow one main character who has to go through different rooms and different traps. We can't forget the iconic opening scene. All the Saw films have really iconic openings. They usually all open with a trap, as does this one, but this is the public execution trap, so it's the first trap that has ever been done in public. It's done in a shop window in the middle of a busy street, so there are people crowding around outside the glass watching this trap as it unfolds. The trap is a bit cheesy with the dialogue and the story around it. It has an iconic and memorable ending as well, and some really iconic scenes throughout that stick out to me when I'm thinking of this franchise. We also got the John flashback meme from this film, where instead of using CGI to make John look younger in a flashback, they just put a backwards cap on him, which is so iconic. You can rent this film on Prime Video, Apple TV, and the Sky Store. The next film is 12 Feet Deep, which has an average rating of 2.0 on Letterboxd. I went and had a look at some of the reviews, and I found that the main criticisms were that it was boring or just a stupid premise, which I obviously disagree with. Two sisters who don't always see eye to eye end up getting trapped inside a public swimming pool. They're still inside this pool when it's closing time, and staff don't realise So they activate the button that puts the electronic pool cover over. The girls are in the middle of the pool at this point, and it's a massive Olympic-sized pool. So of course they do try to swim out, but they can't beat the cover coming over. It's too fast for them. The lights go off and the staff go home. They're only left with a smallish gap between where the top of the water is and the cover is. As the title suggests, this pool is 12 feet deep, so the hardest thing for them is obviously having to stay afloat. They have to try to stay afloat overnight. Obviously, this is going to use up a lot of energy. They're panicking as well. No one knows that they're there, so they just have to wait until someone comes in tomorrow and uncovers the pool. This film actually strangely has a connection to the last one I just spoke about, because it also stars Tobin Bell, who is Jigsaw. In this film, he only has a small role though. This is, of course, a single location film, a very small location. We spend the majority of the film just with the sisters talking to each other. As I said before, they have a struggling relationship, so they've got a lot to work through. It's kind of 50-50 with that and the survival element. You can stream 12 Feet Deep on Prime Video. Next is P2 from 2007. And this is one where critics and audience actually kind of agree, with the critic score on Rotten Tomatoes at 35% and the audience at 36%. I'm not gonna lie, this kind of hurt a little bit because I really like this film. I do understand though why this film won't be for everyone. It's nothing groundbreaking, it's a very simple premise. It's definitely not an original idea. I do think it has some unique elements which I will get into. I absolutely love that it feels very 2000s, it feels very nostalgic to me, and sometimes I do just prefer a simpler plotline after a long day. Set on Christmas Eve, we follow a woman who is leaving work late. She's the last one to leave the office, so she locks up before heading to the indoor car park. But when she gets to her car, it's not starting. This is really frustrating, so she just decides to leave the car park, but when she goes to leave, she can't get out and she is locked in. This ends up being the least of her worries when she begins being stalked and pursued by an obsessed parking attendant. This whole film is set in the unique location of a parking lot. I can't think of any other horror film that is entirely in a parking lot. You would think surely there isn't that much they can do with a parking lot, but it is really action-packed and tense. When parking lots are empty, they are so creepy, especially at night. It's a place that I just wouldn't want to be alone. Although it is quite a big location, it has lots of floors, it still feels claustrophobic and unsafe. It's not exactly a pleasant place to be, it's kind of just like a big concrete prison. The parking attendant obviously knows this place like the back of his hand because he works there, so he knows all the quick ways to get around and all the private entrances. I find the obsessed stalker trope to be so scary, as of course it is a real life threat. There are so many weirdos out there. This may not be one for everyone, but if you enjoy cat and mouse chase situations and single location trapped films, then I would say this is a great one. Main criticisms that I've seen for this one are that it's unoriginal and overdone, which is fair enough, but I just feel like the unique location definitely makes up for that. Also, I actually can't really think of any other films that are like this that aren't slasher films. Maybe my brain has just gone blank, but if you do know any, then please let me know because I want to watch more. Some people say that it lacks tension, which I really disagree with because I found this very anxiety inducing and it really kept me on the edge of my seat. You can stream this one for free over on Plex. Next we have another 2000s film, this one from 2005 with House of Wax. Critics on Rotten Tomatoes give this one a 27%. The audience score is a bit better with 44%, but still very low in my opinion. This is just a favourite from my childhood, and I feel like a lot of people who grew up in the 2000s watching horror also feel the same way. This stars Paris Hilton and had the slogan, "Watch Paris Die." I'm actually really sad that we didn't get Paris as a final girl, because I feel like that would be really cool. There are some cringy moments, but it does actually have a really decent story, and it has some really hard to watch gore, some moments in particular that are still stuck in my brain from the first time I ever watched it. One moment that just unlocked a whole new fear in me, and then some other moments that are just kind of gross. Following a typical tropey slasher opening scene, where we follow a group of teenagers on a road trip, and then they end up having car troubles and breaking down. How many times have we seen this, especially in 2000s horror? Yet this is an opening to so many films that I love. The teens end up becoming stranded near a strange and empty town. As they explore, they come across a massive wax museum where some of the sculptures just look a little too real. Little do they know, the few people that are still living in this town are incredibly dangerous, with some very sick motives. This is such a typical 2000s slasher, but with some more layers. It also has psychological and mystery elements. The criticisms are kind of what I expected, people calling it cheesy. It is cheesy, but in a good way. Reviews also say about the stupid characters and their stupid decisions, how predictable it is, and that it does have some bad acting. Now, I do agree with most of this, but not in a negative way. Apart from the bad acting, for me personally, maybe it's just because I haven't seen it in a while, but there was never any acting that stood out to me as being bad. I also saw some people saying that this was boring. I guess we're not watching the same film, because The House of Wax I know is far from boring. You can rent this one on Prime Video, Apple TV and Google Play Movies. Next up was another one that really shocked me with Unfriended. This has a 37% score with the audience on Rotten Tomatoes, and then the critics is higher with 62%. Even on Letterboxd, I would say it's got quite a low score with 2.4. I was genuinely shocked by this because I don't know why, I just assumed that this was more of a well-loved film. I know it wasn't the first Screen Life horror film to ever exist, but I do think it paved the way for so many to come after it, being one of the more popular ones and having a wider release. Found footage is a subgenre that does get lower rated. I just think it's not a subgenre for everyone, which is something I personally don't understand, because I think it's one of the best subgenres. But then again, there are so many subgenres that I don't like that are so well loved, like action films or the typical rom-coms. A group of teenage school friends are video calling on Skype when a mysterious stranger joins the call. They assume it's a prank at first until things turn sinister, and this user begins revealing each of the friends' darkest secrets. They are told that if they leave the Skype call, then there will be serious consequences, which they're soon to realise is the truth. So they are now in this trapped situation. As a lover of tech horror, I do think this is a really fun element for me. I know they're not actually trapped inside the computer, but as we're only seeing them through their video call, it's kind of giving the feeling that they are. One by one, strange things start happening in the teens' homes. They must face some uncomfortable truths if they want any chance of survival. Although they're on call with each other as a group, it still feels very isolated and claustrophobic, as although they are in this together virtually, they aren't in this at all together physically. I think this was actually the first Screen Life found footage film that I ever watched. I remember seeing it at the cinema and just being so mesmerised. It was just so cool seeing a film play out through someone's computer screen. It almost feels secretive and like something you shouldn't be watching, almost like we're hacking or just have access to someone's computer monitor and are spying on what they're doing. I still don't think we have enough films like this, especially wider releases, to watch at the cinema, which just feels like the best place to see a film like this. It has some really creepy moments and a genuinely engaging story. The characters aren't a strong point. They're typical annoying teenagers, but it's still interesting to have an insight into their Skype call. After looking at some reviews, it seems like the biggest criticism that people have is the unlikable characters, which is a valid point as it can be harder to get into a film or really care what's going to happen to the characters if you're not rooting for them. I didn't mind personally, as I did feel like it was crucial to the storyline for them to clash and go against each other, for them to be paranoid of each other because maybe each of them has some flaws and reasons for the others to be paranoid that they may be the one who's doing it. Another criticism, if you can even call this that kept coming up is that this is just a cheesy found footage film. It's fair enough to not be a fan of the subgenre, and this does have cheesy moments. Some of the dialogue is a little bit questionable, but then again, I do think some of the dialogue is cringy in a teenager way. I really don't mind a few cheesy moments. I didn't really think this film was that cheesy at all. That could be because I watch a lot of found footage and a lot of them do have some very cheesy moments. But I guess also remember I'm a massive fan of 2000s horror, which is just cheese central. You can rent Unfriended on Prime Video, YouTube, Apple TV and Google Play Movies. We're staying in the 2000s for the last film, and that is the 2008 remake of Prom Night. Now this one has one of the lowest critic scores that I've seen, at 9% on Rotten Tomatoes. The audience are a bit more fair at 38%, which I feel like is decent for this film. Out of all the films that I've spoken about today, this is one where I do understand some lower ratings just because it is incredibly cheesy. It's kind of one of those so bad that it's good films, but I will get into that. So this is a reboot or reimagining of the 1980s film. In this film, we follow an event that happened years ago involving a murderous teacher who is obsessed with a teenage girl, so much so that he kills her parents because he believes that's the way that they can be together. He ends up getting caught and going to prison. Then we see events years later, now as high school students get ready for their prom night, which will definitely be a night to remember with the return of that sadistic psychopath. This is a very predictable watch. It has all the cliches, all the predictable slasher tropes, and cringy dialogue. Like I said, for me, this is one of those so bad that is good films where the flaws just kind of add to the charm. I feel this a lot with 2000s horror because they're just so nostalgic to me. And when I say so bad that they're good, I don't mean that in a negative way at all. Being aware that there are a lot of flaws, that it is very tropey, but loving them for those reasons. They're the type of comfort watches that I love to just stick on after a long day, that don't require me to pay full attention. Criticisms that I've seen from reading some reviews usually talk about the terrible character choices, the weak script, and that it's just an unmemorable and unsatisfying film. And whilst I don't disagree with them, I just think this is a bit of fun. It's not a film that I run to rewatch or recommend all the time, but if you're like me and just love a cheesy 2000s film, then I would say give this one a go. You can rent Prom Night on Prime Video, YouTube, Apple TV and Google Play Movies. That is the end of this video today. I cannot tell you how long it's taken me to film this. Because of the heat, I've had to stop so many times. I am sweltering. The UK weather is the strangest thing ever because it's not even a sunny day today. Yet I feel like it's been one of the hottest days in the last week or so. I'm gonna go and sit in front of a fan now and try to cool down. Let me know what horror films you love that are low rated, and I'll see you in another video very soon.